Hello and welcome to today's video. So today we're going to have a look at these really early Judge Dredd Titan book graphic novels. Now these came out in the very early 80s. They reimprinted the Judge Dredd stories from 2000 AD. They come highly recommended. They've aged really well and they make a fantastic collection altogether. Now there's a lot of these to go through. Just looking on the back, there's about 50 or 60 at least. So I've split it into two lots and this is going to be the first part today, which is going to be the numbered volumes starting right back from number 1. So sit back, relax. Do please like and subscribe to the channel if you've not already, and let's get to it. Okay then, so this is the very earliest Titan graphic novel that I've got. Now, this is actually, I think it's the original first edition, because usually on the back they would give you the list of all the other books that were available in the series. So this one here was published, it's a first edition from June 1981. So that's that was launched this series off, and it even tells you the 10 Judge Dredd stories, where these came from, and the original 2000 AD prog numbers. So, you know, prog 50 was the first Lunar Olympics, and it ends with the classic Judge Death series from progs 149 to 151. This is that one, and they couldn't have picked really a better story to launch the series, as it's perhaps one of the best ever early Judge Dredd strips. Classic Brian Bolland and the introduction of Judge Death, possibly one of the greatest Dredd villains of all. And just look at that arc, it's fantastic, isn't it? Now, I remember when these books were being published, that really graphic novels were nothing like what they were today, where the main way people consume comics was by a graphic novel. Back in the day, you know, 2000 AD had only been running since, what was it, 1977? So 2000 AD had been going for 4 years, and eventually they started to do these reprints of classic work. And you know, they couldn't have started any better really with this Judge Dredd graphic novel. A brand new cover by Bolland, which has been reused many times, and certainly a fantastic series. The distinctive black spines, and as I said, quite unusual, this one, in the fact, and I guess just because it's an early edition, that it has got this this new Bolland back cover as well, saying Judge Dredd will return in book 2. So that is the first one. Now these numbered series went on quite a bit, and while they were publishing them, they did also do the standalone novels as well, which were like the complete stories, such as Block War, and then they did the Apocalypse War. They did the Judge Child Quest and things like that. So we'll see these as we go along through the collection, but I am going to split this into two simply because there's so many of them. So this is book 2, and this is a completely different take. It's got a Mike McMahon cover, and this is obviously a later edition. In fact, it's copyrighted 1988, so you can see how the run had expanded in literally 7 years. So you had loads of the Judge Dredd books up there, then the Best of 2000 AD series, which was various strips from 2000 AD, of which I've got some. I haven't got them all by any means, but I've got quite a few of them. And by this time, they had also Titan had started publishing other graphic novels. So the Alan Moore Swamp Thing run, admittedly in black and white initially. Some Batman, obviously The Dark Knight Returns was a huge success. And then look, coming soon, Watchmen. So this was just prior to Watchmen being published. For the first time back in 1988. It just shows how old these actually are now. We are looking, these are rapidly, well, they're 35 years, rapidly approaching 40 years old now, these graphic novels. And as I said, they've really stood up to the test of time. Simply, I like them simply because the paper is nice and bright. It's not like that cheapy sort of reprint paper that you got on the essential Judge Dredds. But also, this was the original size that the 2000 AD progs were printed. So you actually get a really good feel for how the comics actually felt at the time, because some of those have definitely aged now, and this is the best, in my opinion, the best way to read these original early stories before Prog 520, when the format changed slightly and we started getting a lot more comics in colour. So that's number 2. Now I'll turn these around here, and we can just see them as we go along. So book 3 here. Been open this one for a while. Another Mike McMahon. Each one had like a little introduction, which was always quite nice. This one by Nick Landau. A little biography of the artists and writers, Pat Mills, Ron Smith, Mike McMahon. This is a first edition. No, this is a second one from 1986. Absolutely classic stuff. Lots of Ron Smith artwork in this one. I just love these. Judge Dredd is so accessible because the stories are never excessively long. Even the really big ones, something like the Apocalypse War, although it's in 26 parts or something ridiculous, it's such a good read. You just fly through it. You absolutely do. So that's book 3. This is book 4. This is interesting because this is an 86. This probably is a first edition, and this is the format I remember most, where they would show the back covers for a couple of volumes. They're the brilliant Ballad of Halo Jones, plus what was published up to the Judge Dredd in the Judge Dredd Chronicles there, and Best of 2008, Best of Battle, the 2 Charlie's War ones. I don't think I've got them anymore, but they are fantastic. Of course, they did end up reprinting Charlie's War properly many years later in those lovely hardback editions. That's another one of my great strips. This is some classic Carlos Escazera artwork here. Yeah, The Executioner. Remember these? So definitely my favourite Dredd artist. I also love his work on Strontium Dog. Fungus, I remember that one. Yeah, it's all good stuff. So that's book 4. Book 5. Nice new Ball Undercover again there. Really nice. He's definitely my favourite Dredd artist. Fantastic. I think the problem was he was just so slow that he just couldn't keep up with the demand of a weekly comic, so he couldn't do it all around the clock. But come the end, he just ended up doing covers mainly for DC Comics and book jackets. But definitely one of my favourite artists is Bolland. Every one of these is fantastic. I remember League of Fatties, one of my all-time favourites. What a fantastic strip. I read it many, many times. I remember that double-page spread in 2000 AD. Fantastic stuff there. There we are, 273. Yeah, what an imagination old John Wagner had come up with all this stuff. Here's volume 6. It doesn't say who the cover artist is on that one. It's not a Bolland. Interestingly, and this is quite interesting, they say some volumes available in hardcover. Now, I know all the early Judge Dredd ones came out in hardback. I've got a couple of hardbacks as part of this series, but I don't know if I've got any Judge Dredd ones. I've definitely got a Robo Hunter in hardback, and they are super hard to come across. They tend to sell for about £12 to £15 a pop, and I'm not that fussed about it. I'm just happy to have these like in any edition, to be honest. And the paperbacks are absolutely fine, but the hardbacks are lovely all the same. But I think if you were deciding to try and collect these, if you wanted to collect them in first edition, you're going to have a bit of a job. And if you try and track down all those hardbacks as well, you're going to really struggle because some of those are very, very rarely seen. Number 7 here. Yeah, I never had these 2 Modesty Blaze or the Garth books. This is dated 85, so I imagine this is a first edition as well. More classic Escazera artwork. Another follow-up, actually, another Fatties, One Requiem for a Heavyweight. They were, Two-Ton Tony, I think he was called. Absolutely fantastic. They're so funny, those. They're brilliant. Obviously, these ones were published after the Apocalypse War, but if you look at the Chronicles, they actually haven't published the Apocalypse War yet, so they're actually publishing stories, reprinting stories that came after the Apocalypse War chronologically in the comic, but they haven't actually as yet published the main story, which is a shame. It's weird. I mean, they would never dream of doing that these days, and the modern Dredd reprints do reprint them all absolutely chronologically, including all the stuff from the annuals and things like that. So maybe that's the way to read it if you want to read them strictly as they were published. These, I guess they had to use like certain stories and mix up the artists and writers in each volume, but I think they did a really good balanced job, and as these were coming out I was picking them up because they weren't that expensive, just a few pounds each book. To have them in a permanent form. I used to have a run of 2000AD right from number 1 up to I think Prog 800, something like that, before I had to get a shot of them because they're just taking up so much room. But I never got rid of my Dredd Titan books because they're just so good. Here's volume 9 here. There's one of the brilliant Charlie's War collections, volume 2, and they are really worth tracking down if you've never read Charlie's War, about a young chap's experiences during the First World War. I highly recommend it. And obviously one of the early Slain novels on the back there as well. Yes, Cycle of the Werewolf, that was quite a longer one. Steve Dillon. One of the ones I always wanted to see in this format was the complete Harry 20 on the High Rock, which was like a fantastic strip which came out around about Prog 280 to 310, something like that. And it was about a chap on a floating prism which orbited Earth. Absolutely fantastic. One of my all-time favourite 2000AD strips, and it never came out in this format, which I think was such a shame, you know. So this is volume 10. And you see, they made quite a point of numbering these, and almost tempting you to collect the lot, which is like typical. What are they like? So this is volume 11. Got the two Halo Joneses on the back. Volume 1 and volume 2. I guess volume 3 hadn't been published by them. More classic Ron Smith artwork here. He was so prolific and I guess quick, and that's what the series needed, really. Citizen Snork. It's volume 11. Now this is a nice jacket by Bill Seisenwich, if that's how you pronounce his name. I know he was he did the famous Elektra Assassin graphic novel for Marvel, which is also well worth tracking down. But he just did the jacket on this one. Dread Angel. Just got the Angel gang on in. Yeah, great stuff. That's number 12. Number 13 here. This is interesting. It's got a sticker from one of the old Virgin megastores when they were around. 1986. This one's dated. Yep, similar sort of format. Got the Bolland Judge Dredd on the back, the Bolland Dredd, and then the list of what was published up to that time. Yeah, so the way that they've done it, they've fitted these in. So although the numbering on those is separate, they did Judge Dredd, then they did the Cursed Earth saga, then Judge Caligula, then Judge Dredd 2, and then the Judge Death graphic on its own. So that's how they wanted you to read it, although that's not how they were published. So they didn't quite stick to the order that they should be read in, but we'll let them off. Midnight Surfer, that was of course Chopper, the great character Chopper. That was the second Chopper story, where they expanded on him. The first was, of course, I believe, An American Graffiti, I think the story was called. Volume 14. We're over halfway now. And you see these are absolutely fantastic. There's Otto Sump, who did the Horrible Foods, I remember. Uncle Lump's Candy and things like that. Hunter's Club, yeah, not bad. That wasn't a classic, I would say, but Richard Burton, so he was at the time assistant editor of 2000AD doing the introduction. And we got volume 15 here, another Bill Seisenwich cover, really nice sort of style. This has got artwork by Cam Kennedy in. Now, he was another artist who I really, really enjoyed, and he went on to do the some of the Star Wars strips. Dark Empire 1 and 2 were by Cam Kennedy here. Right? Very distinctive style, similar to Mike McMahon. Another Fatties one. Look, there we are. Look, there's 2 Ton Tony. Look at it. What a great cover that was. How can you have such fun with people overeating? I don't know. Gluttony was definitely a thing in Mega City. So that's volume 15. 16, is that Brendan Kahn? I'm not sure the cover artist. More of the same. So by this time, in my opinion, Dredd had taken a slight turn for the worse. Yes, so these are the ones in the between 400, 450, something like that. And Brett Owens had come in. I mean, there was some Brett Owens. That's a lovely jacket cover. The Brett Owens style. He went on to do Tank Girl. You might recognise the sort of artwork here as like Tank Girl-esque. And this is where he cut his teeth, like so many British artists. In fact, that could almost be Tank Girl, but it's not. Brendan McCarthy and Brett Owens. They were up and coming artists at this time, and fair plays to them that perhaps Dredd needed a bit of a style change, and obviously over the course of the 30-40 years that the character's been around, the style's changed many times. But that early period for me, which was reprinted in those earlier books there, will probably never be matched. It was just such a great run, and sadly so many of those artists are now gone, of course, although Bond is still around. That's number 17. Volume 18. Now, these slightly later ones start to get a bit harder to find. And I think if you are trying to track a run down, the ones in sort of the mid to late 20s are the hardest of all that you might struggle with. But don't let that put you off by any means, because they are out there. You just might have to be a little bit more patient. Now, this was good that Cliff Robinson started in the early 500s as a Dredd artist, and he had a very similar style to Ron Smith and Brian Bolland, and it's really noticeable, and thank goodness they got him on board, because he was another great addition to the Dredd series, and his artwork was very much needed to sort of counteract the stuff that was coming out by Brendan McCarthy. Volume 19. This is Ian Gibson. So Ian Gibson's obviously more well known for doing Robo Hunter. That's probably his most famous strip. And Halo Jones. You see, this is the same artist who did the Ballad of Halo Jones. So Ian Gibson, he is still around, really great artist, but I prefer his work on Robo Hunter, but really detailed. He's like the 2000AD equivalent of Sergio Aragonés, so he's got those really busy, detailed panels in all his work, particularly so in the Robo Hunter series. There's a typical Ian Gibson cover there, full of detail. So it's number 19. Number 20 here. I'm not sure who the cover artist is, but it looks like a Bill Seisenwich again. 1988. Yeah, so this is where the series, I think, was let down, in the fact that by this time, certain Dredd stories were in full colour or painted, and it just doesn't seem to work in this black and white format, to me anyway. Yeah. 2000AD went much larger from Prog 520. You see, this is a cover from 537. And in my opinion, yeah, it just doesn't work as good. And this is where the series starts to slide. And I imagine that's why Titan ended this run and moved to standalone full colour graphic novels in a different format, which is slightly thinner and taller. So depending on how well this goes down, and if people would like to see that, I have got quite a collection of those later ones as well, because they definitely do these later stories much better justice than they could have been done in black and white here. But yeah, these are up to 1986 now. Still getting an introduction in each book, which is cool. Volume 22. Great jacket on this, Seisenwich. Brendan McCarthy, Wally Squad. So there's still some classic stuff in here, but for me, the most classic Dredd period has already been and gone by the time these were coming out. This is a cover by Simon Bisley, famous for Slain and many other things. Arkham Asylum, I think was what it is. Bit of Ez Kazera come back there. Obviously, he had a break after the Apocalypse War and did loads of Strontium Dog, which is why he, however prolific Ez Kazera was, he couldn't be doing everything at once. So it was a great welcome return to see him come back here. Although, admittedly, Starborn Thing is not the greatest of stories, but hey, what can you do, eh? What can you do? That's 23, almost there now. Volume 24. Now, this is another Simon Bisley cover, and also the actual feel of the covers has changed slightly. These are really, really glossy jackets now. 89, so towards the very end of the Titan book run. This is a bit more like it, and this is rounding up some of the other ones that they hadn't done up to that point, because I think they realised that those colour ones just didn't work very well. So these are odd ones from Progs, and also I believe the occasional annual story from the annuals. I think that Black Plague, no, that was an annual one, but was that published in? I can't remember now, but it was fantastic. I remember that, the Black Plague, all the spiders. Yeah, fantastic stuff, that one. Cool, I haven't read that in a while. There you go. See, I've been through this now, and now I have to stop and read it. So as soon as this video is done, I'm going to be reading that one. Volume 24. That was a really good one. Number 25. That looks like Bill Sizenwich, although it's not signed. That sort of distinctive, sort of painted style is great. This one's dated 89. Mixture of the modern artists now. There's an Ian Gibson one, famous for his robots, of course. So. Yeah, you can see this could have been a page from Robo Hunter or Ballad of Halo Jones, just because of the style. '25, we're almost there. Volume 26, a Simon Bisley cover again, dated 1989. We're getting very near the end of the run now, so if you have a look, Judge Dredd, Volumes 1 to 27, Cursed Earth 1 to 2, and they list them all there. Then all the best of 2000 AD. Then all of this lot is non-2000 AD stuff. So those early Judge Dredd graphic novels were the basis of a publishing empire for Titan Books, and well, they're still publishing this sort of stuff today. They are the renowned genre publisher, and based in London, and they certainly are. Nothing goes under their radar as far as this sort of thing is concerned. And then the very last one, which is Volume 27. So this was the last one in the regular run of the Chronicles of Judge Dredd. And number 27 there across the top. Very similar back to the one we've just had a look at. Some classic artwork again. Some good stuff in there. But that was the very last one to round up all that original stuff. And this was published in December 1989. So that was the run. So over about 10 years, this original run was published. And in the next video then, I will get out all those individual standalone books and series, including the Judge Child Quest and the Apocalypse War and all of those. And we'll also have a look at some of the other Dredd spin-offs as well, such as the Judge Anderson one. I do believe I've got some hardbacks, and I'll have a look and see what the best of Judge Dredd stuff I've got. And then maybe we'll do one other video, maybe a third one, which will be all the later Dredd graphic novels when Titan briefly stopped doing it and they were published by Hamlin. So there you go. I hope you enjoyed that look at these Judge Dredd graphic novels. Now, this is just the first part, the numbered issues. There are all the standalone ones still to come. So the Apocalypse War, Blockmania, Judge Caligula, there's loads of those to come. The Judge Anderson ones as well, plus some of the other 2000 AD offshoots, which I've got as well in my collection, which are also part of this Titan book range. So that will be in a follow-up video, which will be coming very soon. So until then, thank you very much for watching. Hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you soon. Bye.